Hello and welcome to Linux in tutorial. Today we are going to learn about the if-else conditional statements in C programming language. As a programmer, we usually want a program to be smart enough to make choices on its own. So how do we give this artificial brain to our code? Well, the first step is to start small. The very first thing, the most fundamental conditional statement are the if-else statements in any programming language. I repeat, in any programming language. If-else statements simply tell the program to do this if the condition is this, or to do that if the condition is that. If you look at the flowchart that is being displayed to your screens right now, you can see that the if-else statements actually form some sort of a tree. The nodes of the trees are if, and else. If is the starting condition which executes or tells the compiler that okay, we are in a if-else conditional statement or if-else conditional tree. The else if are the optional statements which the compiler looks at when the if condition is not met. And else is executed if all of the if and else if statements fail to execute. Meaning we could say that else is the default for all the other options. To keep this video very short and concise, we are going to create a simple program that would take a number input from the user, and based on that input we are going to tell the user whether he has passed a certain test or not. And if he has passed that test, what is the grade that has been assigned to him. So the first thing we need is we need a number from the user, and we're going to call this marks. Next up, we are going to prompt the user to input his obtained marks. And then to store this input in a variable, we are going to use the scanf function, and we're going to store this in the marks variable. Okay, now we get to the point where we are going to use the conditional statements. So let's set up a criteria over here. So if you look at this diagram right now, so we are going to simply determine a standard that if the student has obtained over 90 marks, then he has gotten an A grade. Similarly, above 80 is B grade, above 70 is C grade, and above 60 is a D grade. And anything lower than 40 is a failure, and everything lower than 60 and in between 40 has a grade of E. So first of all, we use the keyword if, and we enter a condition saying if marks is greater than or equal to 90, then execute this block of code. So what does this block of code mean? So print or prompt the user. Okay, that is not what I wanted to do. So print, you have secured an A grade. Next up, we want to check for other conditions, which means if the marks are not over 90, then what are the marks? So we're going to use an else if keyword, and in here we're going to use the condition if marks are greater than or equal to 80. Similarly, we're going to prompt him that he has secured a B grade. Now I can just copy paste this else if block 2 more times and change this condition to be 70 and 60, and change the grade to C and D. For the grade E that ranges between 40 and 60, I'm going to write another statement if else marks are greater than or equal to 40. I'm going to prompt him, you have barely made it. And for any other score, I'm going to simply use the keyword else, and I'm going to start the block and print that you have failed the test. There is one thing that I would like to point out. You might question yourself that what if he has scored, let's say, 72 marks? So why would the program not give him this score? I mean, the condition is if the marks are above 60. It would still give him the C grade. Why? Well, if we dry run this, the compiler goes through the if-else tree or if-else conditional tree in a sequential order. It checks for the first condition and discards it. Then it moves on to the next condition and discards it. And whenever a condition is true, for example, we had 72 marks. So whenever this condition is true, our program would not check for any other nodes of the tree. Rather, it would just simply get out of this whole if-else tree and continue with the execution of the remaining parts of the program. So if you run the file, you get prompted to enter your marks. In case I have scored 85 marks, so I'll input 85 and press enter. And there you go, we have secured a B grade. Let's run this code once more and let's try if I've scored somewhere between 40 and 60, let's say 53. Yeah, you have barely made it. And for the default condition, which was below 40, we can simply write I have scored 23 marks. So yeah, you have failed the test. So that is how you can use conditional statements to check for a particular condition, and based on those particular conditions, you can define the result however you want to put it. Remember, if else conditional statements are the most fundamental parts of programming. They are present in any programming language. So I would advise you guys to play with if else statements and make up your own problems and try to solve them, because that is one of the best ways to improve as a programmer.